is extremely biased. Iran was the one attacked. They didn't attack. They received the aggression and responded to it, and yet the war is portrayed as being Iran's fault. So I just don't see any prospect of anything coming out of this. And I've thought it was a mistake for the Iranians to agree to these negotiations or to ever have a ceasefire. They should have finished the war. They were winning. and they should have finished it. And they didn't.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It is, I watched an interesting, is it Brandon Straka, Walk Away, Republicans, Walk Away Democrats. Anyway, he had a debate between the baby boomers, people our age, a little older, and the Generation X, the guys basically that are in their mid 30s, early 40s. And there's profound differences, profound. And, our baby, not you and me, but there are others of our cohorts who are just living in a delusional fantasy world. And they refuse to catch up to reality. And they repeat all these, what they've been told repeatedly about Iran's the greatest terrorist state in the world, and they're a bunch of religious fanatics, and they hate us for our freedom, and all that crap. And so when you got a population that believes that, then they willingly go along with stupid government policies. And, it is, it's hurting America big time. And, frankly, I don't know if we can recover from this.
Not for the foreseeable future, especially economically. I think that whatever comes out on the other side of this mess looks different. You know what I mean? That where America is, when I look at
Aaron Mate, welcome here, my dear friend. Let's get a little philosophical to start with. We have some very concrete issues to talk about. How can two people start a war and 8 billion are suffering? And nobody seems to be able to bring this to a resolution. I'm speaking, of course, of Trump and Netanyahu.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's unfortunate that's the position we're in, where these two individuals full of hubris, entitlement, supremacy, believing that Iran would just crumble under their might, launched this war of aggression, completely unnecessary, as everybody knows now. Trump couldn't even keep his story straight, his lies straight on why he launched the war, and now is unable to get out of it because he won't admit that he lost and won't recognize Iran's basic minimal rights as a sovereign nation, which helped explain why he launched this to begin with, because he was trying to overthrow the government, which failed. So I've been saying for a while now, despite all the talk of diplomacy between Iran and the US, I just don't think, and I know other guests on your show have said the same thing, I don't think Trump is capable of diplomacy. Given to his own unique personality, his lack of focus, his lack of seriousness, his entitlement, his narcissism, but also because it would require the people around him to recognize Iran's minimal rights as a sovereign nation. And their whole policy, going back many years, even before the Trump camp took office, U.S. policy has been predicated, with a few exceptions, including under Obama's JCPOA, of not recognizing Iran as a legitimate sovereign nation.
Oh, and I almost forgot. Let me put this shit out in the ether, out in the streets. My kids, my two sons, one of which is 19, freshman in college. The other is 21, works for a multi-billion-dollar race team, travels all over the country, living his best life. They've got their whole lives ahead of them. They are not, and I repeat, they are not fucking going to fight a war for a fucking foreign entity and die when they've got their whole lives ahead of them. Not fucking happening. My sons aren't going. Draft, I don't give a fuck about a draft. They're not going. I'm just, like I said, I'm putting this out in the streets right now. I don't give a fuck. They're not going. It's not fucking happening. Or anyone I know is not going to let their sons go over there and fucking die for this madness. Not going to fucking happen. Regime change. I don't give a fuck. Go to fight for oil, steal gold, the third temple. I don't care. They're not going. They're not going. You can come and get me first. You can come and get me. I'm in good enough shape. I'm in good enough shape, and I don't give a fuck. Like I said, just letting you know. Not going. It's not happening. You're not taking my sons over to some foreign land to die for your fucking proxy war and your fucking money laundering war. It's not happening. It's not happening. I hope you see it. And I hope you know, myself or anyone I know is not going to allow it to happen. So are millions of people. It's just not going to happen. All right? So do what you got to do. You're not getting my sons.
Okay. So Donald Trump, let's not forget, he came out saying, we got to remember this. We must understand Russia. Remember this. Donald Trump started off talking about NATO expansion, and he said, hey, I understand. Remember him saying, I understand? I understand that Putin, they never say Russia or the Russians. There's no such country as Russia. Doesn't exist. You only say Putin. In the same way that the liberals only say Trump, in the same way that the Zionists only say whatever, Assad, a big part of the neocon. You're listening to neocon foreign policy discussion when there are no countries involved, when there are only names involved. That's neocon foreign policy discussion, because that's the discussion that is used to deceive people. What you do, it's quite simple. You pretend the country doesn't exist. You only talk about an individual. You demonize the individual, and then you talk about, how you must stop this evil demonized individual. So Putin, Donald Trump started off saying, basically, I understand, hey, NATO's getting close. Hey, we're in his neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. He can't argue that he doesn't know. He can't argue that he doesn't really understand this is about NATO expansion.
Anyway.
Let me add.
Oh, boy.
Well, look, this is what we don't understand. This is Eastern Europe.
Right.
None of this has anything to do with us. We should
Agreed.
not be involved, period, other than to help negotiate an end to the conflict.
Agreed. And I have to tell you that the hundreds and hundreds of people commenting agree. And they've also said, we're happy the Colonel had a nice vacation, but we're glad he's back.
Well, you know what your viewers can do that I think most of us are beginning to learn to do in the West is whatever is said about Russia, drop the word Russia, substitute Ukraine, and you're closer to the truth.
Colonel, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll have you back real soon. All the
Okay,
best.
Judge.
I feel terrible about the whole thing. I'm firmly of the opinion that Israel is the worst thing about America. And it's the cause of America has plenty of problems without them, but they're just their moral hazard and their perverse incentives and the operation of our national government and our national security state just cause so much grief. It's unbelievable.
Let me tell you a story. When after I retired from the government, I didn't want to have anything to do with what is called the Middle East. I was talked into heading the Middle East Policy Council by George McGovern, who was then the head of it, and Frank Carlucci, and a couple of other people. And I agreed to do it basically for nothing. Because I thought that the American people were ignorant and needed to have access to facts about Islam, about West Asia, and so on. So as part of the exercise of sharpening the message of the Middle East Policy Council, we arranged a program, a struggle session, if you will, with some very well-educated, well-known television personalities. How can we simplify our message so that it connects to our audience better? And we did a whole day seminar, and two very famous people, one close to President Carter, one a well-known journalist. When I said, Islam regards itself as the summation of Judaism and Christianity, as God's direct advice to human beings, to whom he had previously sent messages through prophets, Jewish prophets, Jesus, the greatest Jewish prophet in the opinion of Muslims. And the recipients of these messages ignored them or forgot them or didn't follow the messages, the directions. He finally said, this is God. God finally said, take this down, memorize this. I'm speaking directly to you, Muhammad, take it down. And so one of the participants turned to me and said, you mean Islam is related to Christianity and Judaism? This is the level of ignorance that we're dealing with. The Islamic tradition builds on the Judeo-Christian religion tradition. It is part of it. One of the interesting things when you learn Arabic, as I did, is by contrast with a language like Chinese or Tamil, which I also learned at various points, you encounter the same figures of speech, the same parables, the same stories. In fact, the Holy Quran has the most beautiful account of the virgin birth of Jesus from Mary and the angel Jibril or Gabriel that you can find. It's much clearer than anything in the Christian documents. So I think we're dealing with an enormously ignorant audience here. And they just think, well, Islam must be, totally unrelated to our ethical traditions. No, it isn't. It is entirely consistent with those traditions. It also, of course, reflects the life in the 7th century, which was different from the 21st century. it seems to me that there is the beginning of some kind of Islamic Renaissance going on, but I won't live to see whether I'm right or wrong about that.
One tiny flaw.
They are trying to take over our country. Congress quietly moves to integrate U.S. and Israeli militaries. To put it bluntly, they want our military to be theirs, okay? The 2027 National Defense Authorization Act would, quote, all but fuse the two countries' armed forces together. And that is only one of a laundry list of items that Israel has taken to try to take over our country.
Quite a year for Israel. Buy TikTok and censor. Buy CBS and censor. Buy CNN and censor. Buy influencers. Charlie Kirk gets killed. TPUSA becomes more Israel. Geofence churches. 1,000 pastors become Israel ambassadors. Replace MTG with pro-Israel. Replace Massey with pro-Israel.
Once again, it's Israel's world and we are just living in it.
Here's my hypothetical telephone call. BB at this end, ding, 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 calls up. Donald, listen, you got a problem with Epstein. I got a problem with Epstein too. Then, okay, you got a real problem right now, Donald. You got a real problem with Epstein. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to make sure Charlie Kirk goes away. I'm going to help you. And the way he's going to go away is going to be dramatic. And it's going to be, in the news. And it's going to take all the oxygen out of the air. And Epstein will recede into the woodwork. That okay with you, Donald? Well, BB, I don't know what you mean. All right, Donald, you don't need to know. I think he had a lot to do with it. I think BB orchestrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Where is all of this leading?
Well, it's certainly leading to a dramatically isolated and alienated position for the United States of America. I would estimate right now that 2/3 of the world hates our guts. And another 20% on top of that 2/3 is looking around trying to figure out what they're going to do as the empire disappears from the face of the earth because they're dependent on it in some way or another. So we're losing badly, and we're losing all across the globe. It's not just Trump. It started with my president, George W. Bush, in the immediate wake of 9/11 when we just went berserk and started doing things like the Patriot Act and torturing people from the very highest levels in the country.
The whole world is moving from west to east, and the center of that move is China.
You got that right. You got that right. And let me just add another detail here that most people have no comprehension of, no sensation about. China has 6,000 ships in its deep sea fishing fleet, each of which is armed. 6,000 ships. Go ask any Filipino who has been out on Mischief Reef or in that vicinity and looked up from their tiny little patrol craft 7 or 8 decks to the top of a Chinese deep water fishing boat with a cannon aimed at them. 6,000 ships. That's the biggest fleet in the world. We have about 270 ships in our Navy. They have, this will blow you away. They have 1 million charging points for electric cars. We have 17,000.
Whoa.
Their solar fields in Tibet, for example, are up at high altitude where they use about 25% less power and water. And they generate about that amount more electricity because they're at such high altitude. And their solar fields extend further than you can see. And although they're still the biggest polluter because of all the industry and so forth, manufacturing and other things that we don't have, and they're still burning coal, which we sell them. That's about the only people that buy our coal. I don't know if they're buying it anymore. But they are the world's biggest polluter, but they are also the only industrial power that is reversing that situation at the rate they are. In another 10 years, they'll be a net zero. They'll be at net zero. And yet they're still producing like they're producing. So their innovation is incredible.
This is on my dad's side. They killed him. And so she had to do that death march that she survived with her children in tow, including my grandfather. I didn't know this until very recently. My last name wouldn't have been Kasparian. Kasparian is the last name of the man who took my great-grandmother and grandfather in and married her and whatever. So I would have had a completely different last name. This made me much more curious about like my ancestry and everything. And on my mom's side, they fled to Palestine. Okay, so my grandmother's birth certificate said Haifa, Palestine. And so I started doing some research into that because she was born in 1937 in Haifa. In 1947, a year before the Nakba happened, basically the Soviet Union was sending ships to what is now Israel to take Armenians back to the homeland because, well, there were these terrorist groups that were carrying out terror attacks against Palestinians and Christians, because Armenians are overwhelmingly Christian, right? And so at that time, what my research showed me was that the Irgun, which is one of the 3 terrorist groups that formed Israel, was attacking the, local communities there in Haifa, doing bombings and all sorts of crazy things. So like,
You don't need to spend $300.
750 or so. Again, I'm not an historian. I may be wrong with the dates, but around the year 750 or so, the king of this area decided, in order to escape to the pressure of the Orthodox in the north and the Ottomans and the Muslim in the south, he decided to convert the whole population to Judaism. Period. And that's the reason why today you have all these leaders. You take Netanyahu, Smotrich, Gvir, Ben Gvir, all these guys, Shimon Peres, Golda Meir, Ben Gurion, all these people come from all the same region, which is between Ukraine. I mean, Golda Meir was born in Odessa, so in Ukraine. As an example, Ben Gurion was Polish, the same as, I think, Netanyahu is originating from Belarus. So these people have nothing to do with the Semitic people of the Bible. They have nothing to do with that. This is completely something totally different. They have a completely different origin. They converted to Judaism just for political reason in the 8th century, but that's it. Now they claim the ownership of this territory, but in fact they didn't belong to those sons or the descendants of Abraham that was given that's not even the chosen people in reality.
Between Iran and the US have been solved, at the exception of one. Donald Trump cannot come out and tell the Americans that I am not striking a deal with Iran because I am looking after the future, the political future of Benjamin Netanyahu. And I will explain. Just bear with me a bit.
He asked me to sign his Kevlar helmet, and I said, what I'm going to sign on this helmet, the Department of War, the Pentagon, the bureaucrats may not like, but every American would agree with, no matter your political affiliation. And what I wrote on his helmet is this: no American should die for Israel.
Notice the good things. Feel your cup. Forgive yourself for not knowing what time will tell. 'Cause everything comes crashing down. It's the first
So this is the way the Israelis have done this. This is how they stole Palestine. You know, what people think of as Israel is actually Palestine. In 1947, it was all Palestinian. And this is the Israeli plan for Lebanon. But you're right. There was no excuse for Trump to agree to attack Iran for Israel. None. No excuse.
So, you know, there's backlash, political backlash. And he doesn't, he knows the war is unpopular. He wants to end it. You know, I've been thinking about this, and my conclusion is that He can't get out of this war except in one way, and that is if the Congress overrides his desire for the war and pulls the plug on it, which they almost did, by the way, the day before yesterday. They were about to vote in the House of Representatives against Donald Trump's war. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, then canceled the vote because he couldn't hold the Republican Party behind Donald Trump. That's serious. So there is a serious rebellion of Republicans against Donald Trump, in part on this issue, in part on the issue of what's been called the felon slush fund, meaning this $1.8 billion giveaway to all of the cronies of Donald Trump and supporters who assaulted the Capitol and killed police on January 6th. Anyway, there's a lot of backlash. So I think really the only way he can get out of this war, and he doesn't, he knows the war is unpopular. He wants to end it. You know, I've been thinking about this, and my conclusion is that he can't get out of this war except in one way, and that is if the Congress overrides his desire for the war and pulls the plug on it, which they almost did, by the way, the day before yesterday. They were about to vote in the House of Representatives against Donald Trump's war. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, then canceled the vote because he couldn't hold the Republican Party behind Donald Trump. That's serious. So there is a serious rebellion of Republicans against Donald Trump, in part on this issue, in part on the issue of what's been called the felon slush fund, meaning this $1.8 billion giveaway to all of the cronies of Donald Trump and supporters who assaulted the Capitol and killed police on January 6th. Anyway, there's a lot of backlash. So I think really the only way he can get out of this war with his reputation somewhat intact is to allow the Congress to push him out and claim that he was betrayed by Congress, that we were on the verge of victory, which he's been claiming all along. And if Congress and the Democrats had not opposed him, we would have had a great victory. I can just hear him saying that. This is the typical stab in the back approach to defeat. It's what the French did when they were thrown out of
Considering the mediocrity of the people around him, the sycophants, vassals, etc., there's nobody there to say, Mr. President, please refrain yourself. No. They're terrified of him.
Yeah. I want you to take a listen to Professor Mearsheimer.
Yes.
Serious academic. Never heard a four-letter word out of his mouth, using some very, very strong language yesterday, particularly at the very end of this minute and a half clip. Chris?
We didn't even make any attempt to argue that the Iranians had done something militarily to precipitate our attack on Iran. There's no provocation here. We just decided we were going to go out and we were going to whack the Iranians, both last June and again this time. Furthermore, both the Israelis and the Americans are running around the world assassinating leaders. This was not something that the United States engaged in large part, or certainly in an overt way in the past. And here we are. And furthermore, there's the Gaza genocide, right? The Israelis, here's an apartheid state executing a genocide in Gaza, and we're complicitous in that genocide. If there were Nuremberg trials, right, where the Israelis and the Americans were brought before the court, President Trump, along with President Netanyahu and many of their advisors, would be hanged, right? This is a genocide, is it not? It is a genocide. What did we do in 1945 with those Germans who executed a genocide in Europe and who were not only accused of executing a genocide, but those German leaders were accused of launching a war of aggression? It bears remarkable resemblance to what we and the Israelis have now twice done against Iran.
He is the first national figure to say that if there were a Nuremberg-like tribunal, Netanyahu, Trump, Hegseth, and the others would be hanged. Hanged.
Absolutely. Absolutely, of course. If the same standards of Nuremberg.
My leader, how are you? Well, it's an honor and a real pleasure.
Army Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who served as Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell during the run-up and early years of the U.S. war on Iraq. He's taught national security affairs at both George Washington University and the College of William and Mary. Colonel Wilkerson, welcome back to Democracy Now! Can you respond to what has taken place over this last 11 days, starting with the diplomatic talks in Geneva between Iran and the United States? And as those talks were just wrapping up, U.S. and Israel attacked Iran and killed the supreme leader there. Your response?
Yes, and Amy, for the second time, we violated international law in that respect and just common human decency. And your comments at the opening of the show were spot on, but not nearly broad and deep enough. I come from an administration of George W. Bush and Richard Bruce Cheney that committed war crimes that Colin Powell and his lawyer Will Taft and I agonized over in trying to present some message to the American people about them. This administration has committed more war crimes in the last few days than I think any country since Adolf Hitler committed. And that is an incredible condemnation of this entire process. We have bombed civilians relentlessly. We have bombed a school. We have bombed a hospital. We have struck facilities in the nature of Iran's oil capacity that is now putting black poison all over 10+ million people. And we are essentially not bombing ballistic missile sites and bombing war materiel. We're bombing people. We took a lesson from the IDF, if you will. We are bombing people, as incidentally they are still doing in Gaza and doing now in Lebanon to a fare thee well. These are all war crimes, and one wishes with fond hope that someday we might be called before the bar of justice and have to account for these war crimes. And what you just talked about is a crime also in the eyes of international relations and people who want to keep decent international relations ongoing in the world. We're destroying that. And on top of all of that, and this is the real serious problem here for America, Trump and Hegseth and Rubio and the other entourage of their national security complex have completely misjudged the nature of this war, as has to a certain extent Bibi Netanyahu. This is a country as big as Western Europe with 93 million people, probably 90 million of whom will fight us to the bitter death, who live in terrain that almost killed Alexander the Great. It is entirely inhospitable to military operations, and Trump is actually talking about putting ground forces there. And the only way he will be able to claim any nature of victory is to do that. Only that will be the end of the empire's presence in the Levant and the Middle East in general, because we will not be able to sustain that economically, physically. We do not have the soldiers or Marines to do that, but that's what he's talking about. This is pure nonsense. There was a column in Haaretz yesterday, and the title of the column essentially was Trump will chicken out in this war too. I'm sorry, he's not going to chicken out necessarily. That might be the tone intent he puts to it. He's going to be defeated, as are we.
by Israel.
Oh, and I almost forgot. Let me put this shit out in the ether, out in the streets. My kids, my two sons, one of which is 19, freshman in college. The other is 21, works for a multi-billion-dollar race team, travels all over the country, living his best life. They've got their whole lives ahead of them. They are not, and I repeat, they are not fucking going to fight a war for a fucking foreign entity and die when they've got their whole lives ahead of them. Not fucking happening. My sons aren't going. Draft, don't give a fuck about a draft. They're not going. I'm just, like I said, I'm putting this out in the streets right now. I don't give a fuck. They're not going. It's not fucking happening. Or anyone I know is not going to let their sons go over there and fucking die for this madness. Not going to fucking happen. Regime change. I don't give a fuck. Go fight for oil, steal gold, the third temple. I don't care. They're not going. They're not going. You can come and get me first. You can come and get me. I'm in good enough shape. I'm in good enough shape, and I don't give a fuck. Like I said, just letting you know. Not going. It's not happening. You're not taking my sons over to some foreign land to die for your fucking proxy war and your fucking money laundering war. It's not happening. It's not happening. I hope you see it. And I hope you know, myself or anyone I know is not going to allow it to happen. So are millions of people. It's just not going to happen. All right? So do what you got to do. You're not getting my sons.
This is how Jesus taught the Lord's Prayer to the disciples in Aramaic. So save it, share it, so you can learn it. Abun di bashmaya, nethkada shmak, teithe malkuthak, newe tzivyanak, aikan di bashmaya afpara, lahman sunkunan yomana, havlan yometin. Washbuklan chavine aikana, dafchanan shbukan lachavine. قولوا إلى النسيانة لحين تسيلا من بيشا آمين.
The hill and saying that Saddam could attack us. We can see mushroom crowds here in Washington, D.C. I remember one retired general officer saying, that is all rhetoric. But let me just tell you something, as I said before, I can give you assumptions, opinions, and facts. Let me give you some facts, Judge, for your audience, and do your own critical thinking about this. Oh, by the way, throw in, they don't like our way of life. Well, wait a minute. Who's over in their part of the world trying to change their way of life? Right. Oh, by the way, let me just say this, Judge. Oh, by the way, who overthrew their democratic elected government in 1953 with the Brits because of oil, if you will? Who assassinated Soleimani in Iraq? Oh, by the way, who broke the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iran nuclear deal? And lastly, who attacked Iran in the summer of 2025? Oh, we should be upset? Oh, the Ayatollah can't be trusted? I just gave you a list of things that why we should not be trusted. Remember this, we attack them. They're not over here trying to change our way of life. We're over there trying to change their way of life. This is my country. I love my country, but I should have the right, which I'm doing right now, to express my deepest concern and upsetness with my country because we're causing all these problems, and particularly in the Middle East, on behalf of Israel. We will not be in these wars if it wasn't for Israel. And let me just say that again. That is a fact. And for your audience to use their own critical thinking. What have we done to Iran? Overthrew their government, tried to take their oil, assassinated one of their major top generals, got out of the JCPOA and attacked them.
Chief, you're a great man. You're full of passion and understanding, and you're fearless. In the Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, next to the phrase intellectual honesty should be a photograph of Chief Dennis Fritz. There's your book, Deadly Betrayal. For any of you watching us now who wants to know how the Bush administration, you see Bush.
And two, most of the keynotes who are very wealthy and perhaps were born and lived in Canada or the US, none of them live in North America. No one lives in North America. Okay, now obviously they're wealthy enough to have homes in Zermatt and Milano and Lago di Como, and but a question that was asked repeatedly by the audience is a sense of confusion of people don't know where to live anymore.
Yep.
And I find that so sad. Like, remember the American dream? Buy the white picket, fence, house, 3 kids, a puppy, whatever. But people don't know where to live anymore. They're like, we want to live America. We want to leave America. Where do we go?
Yeah. Where do you go? And again,
At all.
remember, you wanted this. It's okay. You're okay. Get up.
Oh!
He's done it again! That is a fact! You fucking little bastard!
propaganda. Let me preface these remarks with I never, ever believe Israeli figures. I've been in the government too long to know that the Israelis are patent liars. In their intelligence community, in their propaganda community, certainly, and in their leadership, they are inveterate liars. Let me say that again. They are liars. So you can't believe anything that comes out of Jerusalem. It's all propaganda.
I mean, I feel terrible about the whole thing. I'm firmly of the opinion that Israel is the worst thing about America. And it's the cause of America has plenty of problems without them, but they're just their moral hazard and their perverse incentives and the operation of our national government and our national security state just cause so much grief. It's unbelievable.
Some attention. Yeah! People!
Picture to me is that, well, first off, the government isn't in control. There is a controlling element above government. Some people call it the deep state. I try to define it a little differently, but the government is control. They are not the top tier of power. They are down the line. So but if I think an important fact about this is if the government disappears or loses power, the people controlling government are going to lose power because they use government
right
in order to control the people.
By legislation, no. Was done by the will of one man, Joe Biden. He inherited a mess, but he made it worse.
Well, I put forward that every single election it's worse than the one before. And I think
Yes.
that'll always be so. I have a little different attitude about that, but the military is just they're just the murdering arm of the government.
We came, we saw, he died.
There I found a stall selling trinkets made out of aluminium salvaged from the 270 million cluster bombs dropped by the US in a secret operation headed by the CIA from 1964 to 1973. During that 9 years, the US dropped more than 2.5 million tons of bombs all over Laos, which on average totaled a plane load of cluster bombs and other munitions every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 9 years straight, making it the most bombed country in history. 1/3, or around 80 million bombs, remain unexploded, just waiting to kill or maim anyone who walks too close. That hideous bombing campaign of a country the US was not at war with, which has killed or injured over 25,000 and still kills 50 a year, was orchestrated by the CIA without the knowledge of the American public.
Anyway.
Oh boy.
Well, look, this is what we don't understand. This is Eastern Europe.
Right.
None of this has anything to do with us. We
Agreed.
should not be involved. Period. Other than to help negotiate an end to the conflict.
Agreed. And I have to tell you that the hundreds and hundreds of people commenting agree. And they've also said, we're happy the colonel
had a nice vacation, but we're glad he's back.
Well, you know what your viewers can do that I think most of us are beginning to learn to do in the West is whatever is said about Russia, drop the word Russia, substitute Ukraine, and you're closer to the truth.
Colonel, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll have you back real soon.
Okay, Judge.
Good night and good luck.